Hello, it's Anthony talking to you about hypothyroidism. A slightly windier garden today. I've been asked about the association of hypothyroidism and anemia, but I think for this particular short video I might have to give you a glossary of terms that also may require you to listen to this more than once. So anemia is indicated by a hemoglobin level in women of less than 11 or lower, and in men 13 or lower. The American figures, it's 10 times that, so it's 110 for women and it's 113 for men, so a little bit higher for men. So low hemoglobin. There's also low iron, and there's iron level in the blood. There's also ferritin. Now ferritin is a protein that's stored intracellularly, and it basically controls and buffers the levels of iron in the body, buffering and protecting against deficiency or overload. There's also transferrin, which is a special protein, glycoprotein in the plasma that carries iron around in the blood. So we've got those sort of things as markers for anemia. Now anemia is a global problem, and indeed I would say that in the Western world hypothyroidism is to some degree as well, but 90% of anemia cases are found in the developing countries. So in this sense it's not such a big issue as the overall figure suggests, because there may be a lot less anemia in the Western world. However, there are strong correlations between subclinical and overt hypothyroidism and anemia. So the researchers have identified that in fact that about 50% of those with anemia around the world have iron deficient anemia, and 50% have another kind of anemia that may be caused by a wealth of factors, from vitamin A deficiency, a lack of B12, even malaria and other infections and so on, and pernicious anemia, which is an autoimmune condition which attacks the parietal cells, stops you having adequate intrinsic factor that allows for B12 absorption. So 50% is iron, 50% of the other factors could include B12, folate and vitamin A, but also disease states as well. So what they found in lots of different human studies, a lot of them have been conducted on vegetarian children, interestingly, so we need to take those perhaps with a pinch of salt, but definitely a strong correlation between hypothyroidism and subclinical hypothyroidism and anemia. And they've discovered that a lack of iron leads to negative factors for thyroid function. And I'm going to explain a little bit about the mechanisms. But remember that about 50% of cases of hypothyroidism with anemia, it's not iron deficiency. But nonetheless, with a lack of oxygen, some of the same causes or involvements with hypothyroidism will exist. So iron deficiency leads to a lack of energy, and the lack of energy effectively influences the thyroid peroxidase enzyme, which is a heme-containing enzyme that actually converts iodine and puts iodine with tyrosine for thyroid hormone. So lack of hemoglobin, lack of iron, leads to a lack of energy, resulting in a lack of thyroid hormone production, number one. Number two is a decrease in iron and in oxygen stops the production in the liver of a deiodinase enzyme that converts T4 to T3. So we've got that factor. The enzymes that convert T4 to T3, the active thyroid hormone, that's inhibited by a lack of oxygen and lack of hemoglobin, whether it's iron or not, deficiency anemia. It also does a low level of iron, it reduces the tissue conversion peripherally of T4 to T3. So there's another mechanism. It's not just in the liver, it's also in other tissue. And it also decreases T3 metabolism, does a lack of iron. So a number of different reasons why anemia may affect the thyroid hormone mechanistically. So we've got the lack of energy for the TPO, so you have less T4 production. You've got a decrease in the liver deiodinase enzyme converting T4 to T3, and peripherally as well. And then you also have a decrease in T3 metabolism. Now what's interesting is that if ferritin goes up, and then T4 and T3 go up. But they've also found a connection with low body temperature, particularly in studies in women. And it seems that women and children are more likely to have anemia. They've discovered that the body temperature goes up when they get restored iron, but their thyroid hormone levels only go up partially, not wholly explaining the improved energy or heat within the body temperature, effectively. So it's quite dense information, but effectively anemia leads to thyroid issues, should always be considered, but we always need to look at the underlying causes of the anemia and not give iron to everyone. Iron may be essential, but don't give iron to people who don't need it, because it's a pro-oxidant. So it's a complex one. You may need to listen to this more than once. So we've got the connection between hypothyroidism or subclinical hypothyroidism and anemia. And finally, in one study where they looked at 100 people with overt hypothyroidism and 100 people with subclinical hypothyroidism, and they compared it to 200 healthy controls, they actually found a degree of anemia in 26% of the controls. But they found that the subclinical hypothyroid folk had 39% of those had anemia, and 43% of the overt hypothyroidism. They concluded that there was the same degree of anemia in overt hypothyroidism as there was in subclinical hypothyroidism. So again, the distinction to be drawn that subclinical hypothyroidism doesn't get picked up, the blood tests are not always accurate, and that those individuals may have a degree of anemia. Even if it's not an anemia, that can still have an impact on the efficacy of thyroid hormones. Now, I hope you've learned something. You might have to listen to this more than once. Thanks for watching.